After last night's special Winter is Coming edition of AEW Dynamite, it's all that anyone can talk about, that being the potential working relationship between Impact Wrestling and All Elite Wrestling. Why? Because of the main event angle that we saw with Kenny Omega winning the AEW World Championship and Don Callis getting involved, telling viewers at home if they want to find out more, they can watch Kenny Omega Tuesday nights on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. It was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. Now, if you do watch the channel, we did a video about, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, talking about Don Callis' involvement with AEW. Now, in that video, I spoke about a potential working relationship between AEW and Impact, potentially Don Callis becoming a manager for Kenny Omega coming forward, and wouldn't you know it, we were right. We were right to predict that. Now, last night in the main event between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship, we had Don Callis on commentary for the match, but eventually he made his way to the ring to check on Kenny Omega after Omega took a tough suplex to the floor late in the match. Now, Moxley continued to fight, but Don Callis got a microphone to tell the referee that Kenny Omega was hurt. This allowed Jon Moxley to blast Don Callis with a punch, and the microphone ended up rolling into the ring. Kenny Omega then took the mic, hit Jon Moxley with it, and then finished off the champion, hitting a one-winged angel for the big victory and becoming the new AEW World Champion. Now, that wasn't even the biggest story, because after the match, Don Callis, the executive vice president, one of the executive vice presidents of Impact Wrestling, grabbed the AEW World Championship and helped Kenny Omega run out of Daily's place. This was past an angry AEW president Tony Khan. I think Jerry Lynn was there as well, the AEW roster, and towards a waiting vehicle. Now, Alex Marvez, a broadcaster for AEW, then asked Don Callis what just happened. Don Callis then responded, "We can find out Tuesday on Access TV," referring to Impact Wrestling. And Omega looks like he's going to be on Impact Wrestling next Tuesday, and now it looks like this is the beginning of that partnership we predicted about between AEW and Impact Wrestling. It looks like going forward there is some form of working relationship, partnership, and storyline going on between AEW and Impact Wrestling. And by all accounts, this was obviously a huge topic coming out of Dynamite last night, but by all accounts, this has been a partnership that's been worked on for a long, long time. Now, with Kenny Omega set to appear on Impact Wrestling next week, now that opens up the possibility, of course, of Impact Wrestling stars appearing on AEW and AEW stars appearing on Impact Wrestling. And many have taken to social media and pondered the possibilities of what this interpromotional matchups and warfare could look like between AEW and Impact Wrestling. Now, according to Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer Radio, this was a quote from Dave Meltzer, quote, "The Callis thing has been in the works for a while, and Don Callis was actually the person who pitched the idea of having Kenny Omega showing up on Impact." Of course he would be, by the way. He is the executive vice president, one of the executive vice presidents of Impact Wrestling. Of course he wants Kenny Omega, one of the biggest stars, wrestling stars, and one of the best wrestlers in the world. Of course he wants Kenny Omega appearing on his TV show. He would be ludicrous to not want that to happen, and he's made it happen. So credit to Don Callis. It's a huge deal for him that he's been able to facilitate this relationship between AEW and Impact. Credit to him. And Don Callis, he's been widely instrumental when it comes to Kenny Omega's professional wrestling career. It's widely documented. Don Callis, he was the one who convinced Chris Jericho to wrestle Kenny Omega at New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom 12. This was a match, along with All In, that reportedly led to current AEW president Tony Khan conceiving the idea to create All Elite Wrestling. And AEW and Impact could possibly use that history going forward. Dave Meltzer also noted that the two promotions are going to be working together to a degree, although the full details of their partnership are currently unclear right now. It was also noted that this past week, Impact Wrestling actually showed a throwback match between the Young Bucks, then known as Generation Me, and the Motor City Machine Guns, back from when they were both in Impact Wrestling, I believe around 2010, easy for me to say. This was during this past week's episode of Impact on Access TV, and this was, quote, "more than just a coincidence," even though, of course, Impact Wrestling does regularly air old matches. They've been doing it all of this year, and they've been doing it quite often, quite frankly, but this idea of showing the Young Bucks, Generation Me, facing the Motor City Machine Guns during the episode of Impact on Access TV was a subtle hint and nod of what's to come when it comes to this AEW and Impact relationship going forward. Now, as I mentioned, the full details of this relationship we don't know right now. We don't know if it's full-blown talent trading. We don't know if it's just Kenny Omega and Don Callis. We don't know if Impact stars are going to be going over to AEW. We don't know if AEW stars are going to be going over to Impact apart from Kenny Omega. We don't know. Meltzer did add, though, that Callis will be Omega's manager going forward in Impact and in AEW. This could be similar to Bobby Heenan managing former AWA heavyweight champion Nick Bockwinkel in the 1970s. Now, what's interesting about this is that Nick Bockwinkel was involved in the first ever AWA versus WWF World Championship unification match, wrestling WWF champion Bob Backlund to a double countout in March of 1979. So this could be a kind of similar deal where we've got this interpromotional warfare and maybe even both world champions face off. Now currently the Impact World Champion is Rich Swann. Is Rich Swann ready for that position to be facing off against Kenny Omega? That's debatable for me. I'm all for Rich Swann being the World Champion. I think it's been a step up for him. Is he the guy to be in this whole unification deal with Kenny Omega? I don't know, but we could be looking at a scenario maybe in the future where Kenny Omega holds both the Impact World Championship in addition to the AEW World Championship too. Now, this isn't the only working relationship, of course, that AEW has right now. Besides Impact, AEW also has plans to work with New Japan in terms of letting their talent work for New Japan. There hasn't been much with New Japan coming over to AEW. There are plans for that. AEW wants that. Whether or not New Japan wants that, we don't know. But we also know that AEW has a relationship with AAA. Kenny Omega will travel to Mexico soon to defend his AAA Mega Championship against Laredo Kid at Triple Mania on December 12th. AEW also has a relationship with the NWA as well, which allows Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb to wrestle for AEW and NWA. Similarly, it was said by Meltzer that it would not be surprising if some of Impact Wrestling's biggest stars show up on Dynamite soon, which opens up a huge plethora of dream matches we didn't think we were going to see, whether it's the North and FTR, whether it's the Good Brothers reuniting with the Elite. There are so many exciting possibilities there, whether it's some of the Knockouts coming over to AEW, actually showing how to do women's wrestling in pro wrestling. Now, Meltzer also said that AEW President Tony Khan's recent tweets that got quite a lot of heat about a shift in the balance of power in pro wrestling were meant to be about the events that transpired on Dynamite tonight, from the debut of Sting to the alliance between AEW and Impact. If that's the case, thumbs up. That is absolutely true. Tony Khan is right about the balance of power possibly shifting. Why did he do it before the episode with Pac, though, returning? I'm still, slightly iffy when it comes to that one. But we've had a lot of people commenting on this potential relationship between AEW and Impact. One has been the Young Bucks. Now, I mentioned Impact aired a match between the Young Bucks and the Motor City Machine Guns this past week on Impact. But last night, late on Wednesday, Matt and Nick Jackson, currently the AEW World Tag Team Champions, posted a picture of their time together in Impact when it was known as TNA, when they were known as Generation Me, wrestling under the name of Max and Jeremy Buck. So this comes after this essentially the announcement of this AEW and Impact relationship was announced, and suddenly the Young Bucks are teasing possibly they could go back to being Generation Me earlier go back to being Generation Me earlier than in their careers. Impact Wrestling have also their official Twitter account. They commented on this relationship and what happened at the end of Dynamite. They tweeted, quote, "Tuesdays are the new Wednesdays." AEW's Twitter account did respond to this with "Hi at Impact Wrestling," but that tweet has since been deleted. I don't think they want to overtly come out and say that the relationship between AEW and Impact is official. I think they're still trying to play into the storyline there. Nevertheless, it's fascinating that the people that hold some of the biggest championships in AEW right now, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, all EVPs of Impact of AEW, by the way, as well. The Bucks have a relationship with Impact from their time in Impact back in 2010, 2009, around that period of time, 2010, 2011. But also, Kenny Omega is going to be appearing on Impact Wrestling now. You could have all members of the Elite show up in Impact Wrestling over the course of the next weeks or months. But, as I mentioned, this possible relationship and possible talent trade could go the other way as well, with some Impact stars appearing on AEW Dynamite. One name could be Sami Callihan, because Sami Callihan, former Impact World Champion himself, is the latest star to react to this possible developing partnership between AEW and Impact. Callihan, easy for me to say, tweeted out a GIF of someone pulling out a switchblade knife indicating a possible reunion with Callahan and former AEW World Champion Jon Moxley, who were known as the Switchblade Conspiracy during their days on the independent circuit, mostly in CZW Combat Zone Wrestling. So maybe Sami Callihan could be making appearances with AEW now. This whole relationship opens up so many avenues of possibilities. It kind of blows your mind, and it's a massive story. I know Sting made his AEW debut last night on Dynamite, and we've made a video about that, but this to me just feels even bigger. This, it really is balance of power shifting. These are two big companies coming together and kind of crossing lines that we didn't expect to be crossed, and it's fantastic. It's incredibly exciting. It really is. Don Callis, he's been hyping up the storyline on social media as well. He tweeted, quote, "At AEW, screwed at AEW. Hear all about it this Tuesday on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Thanks for the invite, Tony Khan." As I mentioned, Impact Wrestling commented on this, retweeting the clip from Dynamite and saying Tuesdays are the new Wednesdays. So this is big, and as I mentioned, now all of the talent of both promotions have started to tease these possible dream matches we can see. Dax Harwood of FTR tweeted out The North, which then got a response by Ethan Page of The North that said, "We are ready." Now, The North, being a future opponent for FTR, is something they've wanted for a long, long time. Prior to even signing with AEW, FTR, they said, "We want to face The North." They went on Chris Jericho's podcast before they even ended up in AEW, and they said about it in numerous tweets saying, "We want to have a match with The North because The North are one of the best tag teams in the world right now." They're the longest reigning tag team champions in the history of Impact, two-time Impact World Tag Team Champions, legitimately one of the best tag teams in the world, and FTR have wanted to have that match for a while. Now, obviously, when they signed with AEW, a lot of people said, well, that match doesn't look like it's going to happen unless the North eventually end up in AEW, but they've got different expiry dates for their contracts. Ethan Page, his contract expires at the end of the year, whereas Josh Alexander, his contract doesn't expire until 2022, so it'd be a while before we could see that match happening. But now with this relationship between AEW and Impact, this dream match is a dream match because we didn't think it was a possibility between FTR and the North is a possibility, and what a match that could be. What a match that could be, and does that take place in AEW or Impact? Carl Anderson, one half of the Impact World Tag Team Champions currently with the Good Brothers, he tweeted saying, quote, "Here we go, ... And to be honest, he's one of the big players in this, I think, as well, because he's a name, along with Doc Gallows, that people want to see in AEW. People want to see the interaction once again between the Good Brothers and the Elite. Of course, they were part of Bullet Club in Japan with the Young Bucks, with Cody, with Kenny Omega, and everyone wants to see that. Everyone wants to see that again, so could we see the Good Brothers finally be interacting with the Bucks? Could we see the Good Brothers face off against the Young Bucks in a tag team match? There's a possibility, while still being under contract with Impact, they could become the AEW World Tag Team Champions. We could have champions versus champions. We could have the Impact World Champions, the Good Brothers, facing off against the AEW World Tag Team Champions in the Young Bucks, members of the Elite facing off against each other. Absolutely a possibility there. Nyla Rose, a competitor in the AEW Women's Division, she posted a picture saying, quote, "We wearing red again on nah." It's a picture of her with Jordan Grace. Of course, Jordan Grace, a former Knockouts champion. Nyla Rose, former AEW World Women's Champion. Jordan Grace is currently competing in the Knockout Tag Team Championship tournament, but again, we could have a possibility of a crossover in the AEW Women's Division and the Impact Knockouts Division. And we've had Cash Wheeler of FTR say MCMG, which means the Motor City Machine Guns. This was backed up by Evil Uno of the Dark Order. So it looks like the Dark Order and FTR also want a match against the Motor City Machine Guns, who are currently signed to Impact Wrestling as well. These are just some of the dream matches and some of the matches that are a possibility because of this relationship. It's huge. It really is huge. And I mentioned about Tony Khan and Tony Khan talking about the balance of power shifting, and he was wrong on that week. I don't know if he meant it a couple of weeks in advance. I don't know. It's a big deal. It really is a big deal. It's a huge moment, and it's not a lopsided relationship, which I think is really crucial here. It's a win-win for everyone involved. Why is it a win for AEW? They get talent. I think they get talent in. They can do a storyline that creates buzz. They get press because of it. Everyone's talking about it right now. I think in certain facets of AEW, it benefits them massively, specifically the women's division. If you can get some knockouts to come over and have great matches with the AEW Women's Division, that helps. The bigger problem, though, is with AEW and that Women's Division isn't the talent, it's the booking of the Women's Division. It's about you should have multiple female matches per show, multiple female storylines per any one period of time. When it comes to AEW, you should have the females main eventing. If the knockouts come in, is that a possibility? Sure, why not? Absolutely, it's a possibility. The knockouts division is one of, if not the best female division in the world right now, and that's a big statement, but it's absolutely true. I mean, it's arguably the strongest thing about Impact Wrestling is the knockouts division. So AEW getting involved in that's massive for them. It's massive for them. When it comes to Impact, of course, it's a massive win for Impact, this deal. Obviously, the talent. Having someone like Kenny Omega appear on their show, even semi-regularly, is a massive deal for them. As soon as he comes in, he's the biggest star in the company. Immediately. It's that big for Impact Wrestling. It's just that big. And then, of course, you've got the exposure. I mean, the exposure of possibly, when you factor into DVR, 1.5, maybe close to 2 million people that viewed Dynamite last night, not even just live again on DVR, they were told to watch Impact on Tuesday. So the exposure of being on a big cable network like TNT, having all the buzz on social media, I guarantee you, people who don't normally watch Impact Wrestling, they might know of it, they might even be pro wrestling fans, whatever, they will watch Impact next week because they have to now. If they're a fan of AEW or they're just interested in this storyline, this buzz, they will watch Impact next week. I would be stunned if Impact doesn't do a reasonably large number for them. Maybe not for AEW or WWE, but for them, I would be stunned if they don't do a reasonably big number next week because the buzz is so big with this relationship and with this storyline. So it's a massive win, a huge win for Impact Wrestling on in that case, and I think ratings will go up for Impact, and hopefully they'll continue to go up for AEW as well because of the big storyline. People are going to be interested in seeing, are we going to see some form of an Impact invasion? What's the situation with Don Callis and Kenny Omega? Are they holding up Impact? Are they holding up AEW to ransom? Has Don Callis taken advantage of AEW President Tony Khan? Jim Ross talked about being jobbed last night. Have they jobbed out AEW? I think ratings will go up because of this storyline, especially for Impact, but possibly for AEW as well. And as I mentioned, it opens up so many dream matches. So many matches we just didn't think possible, whether it is FTR versus the North or the Young Bucks facing off against the Good Brothers or Kenny Omega versus, I don't know, someone in Ken Shamrock. I know it's not a dream match, but you know what I mean? Or having Sami Callihan face off against Jon Moxley in just a death match from Hell. That could be fun. There is so many possibilities on the female side of things, whether it's Britt Baker versus Deonna Purrazzo or Jordynne Grace going off against Nyla Rose. There is so many exciting matchups we didn't think were possible 24, 48 hours ago. It's a massive deal. It is a huge deal. And again, I don't want to say that I called it, but I certainly said it was a possibility in that video all those weeks back. I don't think people were necessarily saying that at the time. We were one of the first people to say, you know what, Don Callis showing up for commentary at Full Gear isn't a one-time deal. It never is. It's pro wrestling. If the executive vice president of Impact Wrestling is showing up on an AEW pay-per-view in a featured match, there's a reason behind it. We mentioned at the time there could be a working relationship, whether it's just having Don Callis be a regular on-screen performer. It's much, much more than that. It's a working relationship. It's a talent trade. It's having the world champion of AEW appear on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. That is a massive deal. And it's credit to Impact Wrestling, I think. You have to credit Impact Wrestling. Of course, you have to credit Tony Khan for helping put this deal together and being willing to put this deal together and not being like other promotions in the past, being bipartisan, making something work. But you have to credit Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling have been doing fantastic things this year. You have to think of where the company was a few years ago. This was a broken company. It was a broken company. It was a broken brand, most importantly. Everyone that had kind of maybe bought into TNA wrestling at some point had pretty much jumped off that ship because it looked like it was going to sink. You had all the Game of Thrones stuff. People were fed up with the Dixie Carter, the Vince Russo, the Hulk Hogan, the Eric Bischoff, all the different ownerships and regimes that were in there. I said the Game of Thrones stuff between Billy Corgan and Dixie Carter, all that kind of stuff. The brand was dead. The brand, in all intents and purposes, it was dead. Anthem bought it. They went with Jeff Jarrett at first. That didn't really work out for whatever reason. But ever since Don Callis and Scott D'Amore have been in charge there, Impact Wrestling have been doing great things. It's taken a lot of time because that was a brand that really needed a lot of rebuilding. But this is just the next step. Over the last 12 months, the growth for Impact has been pretty exponential. ever really since Slammiversary, it's really taken off. Since that big Slammiversary show where they signed the ex-WWE stars, during that period of time, Slammiversary was trending worldwide. I know that's not a big deal to AEW Dynamite because they do that every single week. For Impact at the time to have Slammiversary trending worldwide, I think it was number 3 worldwide, number 1 in the United States, that was a massive deal. Ever since then, they've just continued building this momentum. Now, in the last few weeks, there's been some murmurs of discontent when it comes to testing and potential contracts expiring. Nevertheless, this is massive for Impact and AEW, but massive for Impact. It's huge momentum. And it opens up the possibilities, like I said. The Good Brothers reuniting with the Elite. The North facing off against FTR. The Knockouts appearing in AEW and maybe actually helping raise that women's division from the ground. You've got the likes of possibly Kenny Omega regularly appearing on Impact Wrestling. The Young Bucks regularly appearing on Impact. Cody Rhodes has a history in Impact Wrestling. Perhaps he comes back to Impact. It's massive. It's massive. Now, in terms of the storyline about Kenny Omega and Don Callis, what does that mean with, an invasion, all that kind of stuff? We're going to do a storyline video that probably more focuses on what are Kenny Omega and Don Callis going to do on Impact on Tuesday. We're going to do a video on that. That's going to drop later today, so be sure to check that out. We do post daily Impact Wrestling videos, most times, daily Impact Wrestling videos, so be sure to subscribe if you are new, bottom right hand corner. If you're excited about this storyline, smash a like on the like button as well, so keep an eye out for that because that is coming later on today. Now, is AEW and Impact working together, a force that can take on WWE? Not really. It's never really been about taking on WWE. It was never about taking on WWE when Impact went to Monday nights and they brought in Hulk Hogan and all that kind of stuff. It was about providing an alternative, and a credible alternative. And this is what this relationship helps achieve. Now, you've got multiple alternatives to WWE. If, in fact, at the moment in 2020, arguably you've got some of the most, the time we've got the most alternatives that we've ever had in terms of wrestling products to watch, whether it's AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, NWA, MLW. There is a ton. And then you've got New Japan, AAA, etc., All Japan. So there are a ton of promotions to watch right now. But I think this is big. This is big. And now, how long will this relationship last? Who knows? At this point, maybe it's going to be a long-term relationship whereby, it's not as obvious every single week as what we saw last night. Maybe it's a deal where it goes on for years and years, but it's just a case of talents going back and forth, and occasionally a talent will work a big Impact show, and maybe a talent will work a big AEW show. Who knows? And when it comes to the storyline, as I mentioned, we'll touch on the storyline that I think is going to happen on Tuesday later today. Is it going to be an invasion pay-per-view, an invasion kind of storyline? Maybe it's AEW's attempt to do an invasion storyline done correctly. We know how botched the whole WWE, WCW, and ECW invasion storyline was in 2001. Impact actually did try to do their own version of an invasion storyline back in 2015 with the whole Impact and GFW deal. That was okay. It felt like a watered-down version of the invasion storyline in 2001. This can be done, though. This can be done, and the whole invasion concept isn't anything new. Back in the 70s and 80s, as mentioned earlier, there have been whole deals with champions being traded or invading other territories and having outsiders coming. It's been done since the beginning of pro wrestling, quite frankly, but it's exciting. Now, I've seen some people say, does this mean that Impact and AEW are merging together? No. Impact is still owned by Anthem. AEW is still owned by Tony Khan and the Khan family. They're not merging together. It's a working relationship. Is there going to be a storyline? Yes. The exciting deal here is that it opens up so many possibilities that previously weren't possible. And I think when it comes to Impact as well, this is something I did want to touch on, why it's so important, this deal, because we've spoken about here on the channel quite a lot recently, the expiring contracts in Impact Wrestling. There are quite a few big stars in Impact that their contract is expiring at the end of December or in the first quarter of 2021. You've got names like Ethan Page and Taya Valkyrie. Their contract expires at the end of the year. Sami Callihan's a question mark too. You've got Willie Mack's contract expires in April. Rosemary, her contract expires in February as well. There are a ton of contracts soon that could expire in the near future. Now, a lot of discussion, myself included, has been, is Impact going to be able to re-sign these people to a contract? Have their heads already been turned? If they haven't re-signed already, which a lot of them haven't, does that mean they're already out the door? This kind of relationship possibly could help Impact re-sign these people because it might not have been possible previously. It could at the very least help keep them under the Impact umbrella. If you're Ethan Page, if you're Taya Valkyrie, if you're Sami Callihan, whoever, maybe Willie Mack in the future. Moose was another name, his contract expiring in February. If you're one of these names, possibly hearing that, hey, we've partnered up with AEW, if you re-sign, you're going to be factored into this. This could, one, help them re-sign with Impact, or two, it could be, if you sign on a little bit of an extension, we can get you into AEW. Or if they sign with AEW, they can finish up their commitments with Impact and tie everything off nicely. We spoke about Impact taping multiple outcomes for promos, storylines, matches, etc., using different talent, using different outcomes. Maybe this helps avoid this problem in the future. If they have signed a contract with AEW, AEW can go, well, we've got a relationship with Impact, go and finish off your storyline and then come to AEW. It helps Impact a lot, I think. If I'm Ethan Page and I was thinking about maybe going to WWE or AEW, I know it doesn't really matter if he goes to AEW now though, but the fact being that potentially he can go, well, I can stay with Impact a little bit now because the AEW option's open because we've got that working arrangement. It keeps it under the Impact umbrella. Plus, if you look at the Impact point of view, it actually allows, we mentioned about talent appearing on AEW Dark or talent not regularly appearing on Impact because they're not factored in at the moment, etc., or they're not ready for the main event right now, they can appear on Impact Wrestling. We've spoken about Miro, and Tony Khan spoke about Miro, saying that he's having to rehabilitate him for the bad storylines and booking that WWE did for him for all those years. Perhaps you could have Miro show up in Impact Wrestling. If he's not ready for the AEW main event because there's things going on in the AEW main event right now, why not having in the Impact Wrestling main event? I mean, it would rehabilitate him if that's what Tony Khan wants to do, and it would certainly bring him up to a level of being a world champion. Now, how are they going to do it? That is an interesting question, especially on the side of Impact Wrestling, because of course, last week it was revealed, Impact Wrestling have taped all of their content for the remainder of 2020, and actually all their content in the build-up for Hard to Kill as well. That's why they taped the multiple outcomes, because people's contracts were expiring. So what's Impact going to do now that this big storyline has suddenly exploded on AEW? Don Callis said at the end of Dynamite last night that you'd have to tune in to Impact on Tuesday to find out what's going on with Kenny Omega, the new AEW World Champion, and Impact Wrestling. Now, does this mean that Kenny Omega and Don Callis are going to appear in the middle of the Impact Wrestling ring with the AEW World Championship? I don't think so. I don't think he was at those tapings. If he was, it was a secret that hasn't been reported yet. I would think it's probably most likely that Kenny Omega and Don Callis probably film a promo at some point that's added into Impact Wrestling. Everything on that show is post-produced anyway. They film all things out of different order and slice them and dice them together, and that's how you get your final product on Impact Wrestling. So I don't think at this point we will see any AEW stars inside of an Impact Wrestling ring before 2021, before the next tapings anyway. I could be wrong. Unless they did all of the tapings last week, having Kenny Omega and maybe the Young Bucks and some others appear in an Impact Wrestling ring, and it was just kept so under wraps and nobody knew, and it was kept a massive secret. If that is the case, then credit to Impact Wrestling, because they've had quite a few leaks recently when it comes to expiring contracts and lack of testing. If they kept under wraps that Kenny Omega was there with the AEW World Championship, then credit to them. I just don't think that's the case. I think most likely you'd have Don Callis and Kenny Omega film a promo somewhere, and then they'll edit that into the final product. So we will see Kenny Omega on Impact on Tuesday. It will be massive for Impact's ratings. I fully expect them to do a good number for Impact. Maybe not in line with AEW or WWE or anything like that, but for Impact, I expect them to do very, very well in the ratings. Look, they have to do well in the ratings. They did a World Championship switch on the biggest episode of AEW Dynamite of the year, possibly the biggest episode of Dynamite ever. Big words, but it's true. The first ever time the AEW World Championship has changed hands on a TV show, not a pay-per-view, by the way. And at the end of that massive angle, on top of that, you've got the Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President running around with the World Champion and costing Jon Moxley the match to give Kenny Omega the AEW World Championship. As they sprint out of the arena, you have this huge angle. And at the end of it, what do? They give a plug for Impact. They tell everyone to tune in to Impact on Tuesday to find out more. It's possibly the biggest angle of the year for AEW, and it goes straight into Impact. That is huge. That is massive. And it absolutely legitimizes Impact Wrestling. I think Impact Wrestling, as I mentioned, they've got a ton of momentum, and they've been doing so well for a period of time now, for at least 18 months, 2 years. If you're a fan of the product for Impact, you know It's been very good and very solid for at least 2 years, and everyone that watches it says universally, why aren't more people watching it? It's because of the stigma that's associated with the brand from the past. Nevertheless, I think this relationship with Impact and AEW right now legitimizes Impact Wrestling. Are they back to where they were before? No. But it puts Impact back at the table, I think. They're back as a player. They're back on the big stage because of this partnership. It pulls Impact back up. It's huge. It can't be understated how huge it is. Now, 2020 was a huge year for Impact. Despite the circumstances of the current climate, despite everything that's been going on, it was a massive year for Impact Wrestling. 2021, with this working relationship with AEW, is going to be much, much bigger. It's going to be huge. And if you're not watching Impact Wrestling right now, you should be anyway. Now you have to. You have to. Things are about to get very big, very interesting, and it's only the beginning because I think this thing's about to explode, and I can't wait for it. It's a massive story. It's one of the biggest stories of 2020, really is. I mean, I know that the craziness that's happened this year and the likes of The Undertaker retiring and the pandemic. In terms of the pro wrestling world, in terms of Impact Wrestling, it's the biggest thing that's happened to Impact Wrestling probably since they went off of Spike TV. I mean, it really is that big. It's a huge story and it's a massive get. Congratulations to Don Callis. Congratulations to Scott D'Amore. Everyone at Impact. I, for one, as a fan of Impact and a fan of AEW, can't wait to see what happens in the future. It's incredibly exciting. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on this relationship between Impact and AEW? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting with you about AEW, Impact, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But if you're just excited for this relationship between AEW and Impact, smash a like on that like button too. But most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.